Story 1. The saddest truth is that you become accustomed to it and forget how important it is to have friends. Some people never come to this realization and remain alone forever. Story 2. It feeds on itself in several ways. The lonelier you are, the more you withdraw. The more you withdraw, the lonelier you become. Loneliness negatively impacts your mental health and self-confidence, and this decline will, in turn, intensify the loneliness. Story 3. Being alone can be comforting. You become accustomed to the quiet and solitude, enjoying the freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you choose. Even in moments of loneliness, you may hesitate to let go of the comfort that comes with being alone. Story 4. Well, it's my birthday today. I'm 38. There is no one to wake up to. No text messages, no social media notifications, no cards or candles. Just a silent house. I made myself a birthday fry-up, watched a movie, and played some Xbox. The only words I'll speak today are thank you to the delivery driver later when I order Chinese food. I might have a few beers tonight as long as I don't let it get out of control. And you know what? It's fine. I don't care, and I haven't for a long time. I lost all feeling long ago, so now there's nothing but numbness. Thank you for all the messages. I guess a good side of being lonely is that you can be lonely with many strangers on the internet. And just to confirm, I don't mind this lifestyle. I'm an introvert after all. It's just that every so often, you wish you had someone to discuss that episode with or to have an adult conversation about things that aren't related to work. Most special days don't really mean anything unless you have someone to share them with. Every day just becomes another day. Story 5. You stop knowing how to speak. Spend some time alone without talking to people, especially face to face. When you have to speak, you may find yourself stuck for words and unable to express yourself because you haven't done it in so long. This happened to me many times, particularly after periods of illness or breaks when I didn't have to go to class and didn't really talk to anyone. When I returned, even if I knew what I wanted to say, my words hesitated, stumbled, or didn't come out. I had simply fallen out of practice at something as basic as speaking. Story 6. Having fond memories of relationships that were not so positive can trick your mind into believing that they were good, encouraging you to seek companionship. Story 7. It's not just harmful for you mentally. It's also physically detrimental. It increases your chances of cancer, heart attack, and diabetes. The longer you are alone, the harder it is to address the situation. You become desperate, and people often disdain weakness, wanting it to fade away. No one is likely to help, and even if someone does, it may not be beneficial. After a prolonged period of isolation, you may feel psychologically distressed, and those who assist you might end up in a similar or even worse situation. Story 8. People speak negatively about you to your face because they feel they have more of a voice than you. Story 9. No matter your social history or how outgoing you once were, if you don't use it, you will lose it. Getting back out there is so difficult. It is overwhelming. Story 10. For me, it is the constant longing for connection, paired with the deep sense that it is almost unreachable because my mind does not know how to let someone in. As a result, it unintentionally keeps them out. Story 11. Nobody cares. Actually, it would be better if that were true. What is actually true is that they judge you for it, harshly in every breath, tone, and expression. Story 12. You forget how to be kind to other people. It's not the intention of kindness that matters, but the expression, such as when a kind word is appropriate. Story 13. Some of us are lonely by choice. We have built up walls to avoid getting hurt again. The reality is we still hurt. There is no one checking on you. This solidifies in your mind that no one really cares, and the people who try to connect may have ulterior motives. Story 14. You grow comfortable with it. It becomes all you know. It's constant. It's creeping, like a miasma that follows you, clouding your mind and distorting your heart. In a room full of people, you can still feel alone. You can give or receive a hug, and it lacks any meaning. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into dates on a calendar. You begin to continue week-old conversations with people who don't know what you're talking about. To them, it was small talk at work. To you, it was the last meaningful interaction you had. If you want people to see you and they never do, then why try? Why care? Why should I waste my time trying to be healthy and look good when nobody wants me? This is where the spiraling can begin. An endless loop of self-fulfilling prophecy convinces you that nobody wants you, so you stop taking care of yourself. Then nobody wants you because you don't take care of yourself. The prophecy is fulfilled. The other half of loneliness isn't isolation but desperation. It's people posting anything within their moral compass to get likes, comments, and shares. It's your coworker who never seems to shut up for even a second. People are so desperate for any sort of meaningful interaction with another human being that they'll stoop to any level of depravity to feel seen. It's a very sad and depressing cycle that I find myself caught in. I am balancing both isolation and desperation, realizing the patterns and challenging learned beliefs and reactions. It's one of the most challenging things I've ever had to do because a part of my loneliness is a side effect of a trauma response that protected my psyche during adolescence. Story 15. Not knowing how to approach people without seeming intrusive or reaching out to those you have feelings for can make you feel like you are bothering them. Story 16. No one to share your emotions with, whether it be excitement or sadness. It really hardens you and can make you feel unimportant and isolated. Story 17. If people and the world are not approaching you, then you must approach them or become accustomed to solitude. Story 18. You can't feel your self-worth, so you start hurting those who care about you. If loneliness could kill, it would have been less painful. Story 19. You may become so desperate for a situation to end that you might accept poor treatment from negative individuals because it feels better than being alone, right? Story 20. If I died in my sleep tonight, there is no telling how long it would take for anyone to find me. I would not even care except that I have 2 dogs, and I do not want them to go without food and water. Story 21. You go unnoticed. You have to be the first person to reach out constantly. You can't share your achievements with anyone, and you have almost nothing to do half the time. You can only escape the loneliness for so long before it consumes you. You eventually run out of books to read, games to play, and even music to listen to. Most of the time, you're left waiting for someone to text you back, waiting for someone to acknowledge you, or even waiting for your partner to come home. Story 22. I had a wife and kids, and I felt lonelier than I currently do without them. I miss the kids, but at least I can do what I want without someone judging me constantly. Story 23. The saddest part is that people know but simply do not care. In fact, they will avoid you, thinking it is your fault and that you are lonely for a reason. Everyone will be on guard around you, looking for the smallest thing to convince themselves that it is your fault you are lonely. It is a perpetual double-edged sword. Story 24. The longer you are alone, the harder it becomes to not be alone anymore. You do not realize how much social skills are like a muscle. When you are out of practice, it is painfully obvious. Story 25. It shows in your face, demeanor, and speech. It drives others away, leading to increased loneliness. It's a vicious cycle. Story 26. I noticed during COVID the lack of mental stimulation. Having nobody to talk to about your interests is difficult. It's also possible for someone to feel lonely without being alone. Story 27. I used to be a social butterfly. I had friends from many different groups, countries, and jobs. But life happened. We all got busy with children and responsibilities. Daily meetups became weekly, then monthly, and eventually just polite holiday greetings. Some people left the country, others gradually disappeared, and some passed away. We did not unfriend each other. We just slowly rode our boats separate ways, 1 degree at a time. The most hurtful thing is not that nobody checks up on you or that there is no one to celebrate good news. The most hurtful thing is when my wife told me that I do not have any friends. Deep down, I never acknowledged that I had been friendless for some time. Story 28. The vast majority of people discussing loneliness, even in this thread, have never known the despair that comes from forced loneliness. Most posts here describe loneliness as a choice, an addiction, something that one has decided for oneself, but can also escape from if there is a true desire to do so. However, soul-crushing loneliness doesn't begin until that choice is taken away, until one has genuinely lost the ability to form any relationships, regardless of willingness or effort. This experience can last not just a few months, but decades, if not an entire lifetime. I believe the quarantine during the COVID-19 pandemic is the closest most people will come to experiencing this form of loneliness, as it may be the only time in our lives when socializing was taken out of our hands. I describe it like water. If you live in a developed country where unlimited amounts of clean drinking water are available, then water isn't a concern. You simply drink it when needed and continue with your day. But if you live in a place where water is scarce, then your whole existence revolves around it. It is easy to preach about learning to love being alone when you have control over when and how long that loneliness will last. But no matter how much you learn to appreciate your own company, years of uninterrupted solitude will eventually wear you out. Story 29. All the work you do to prepare for friendships and relationships often leads to feelings of loneliness in those situations. Story 30. You end up really liking it and looking forward to it. However, you slowly lose people's skills and develop a very thin skin to the point that intimacy can make you cry and become emotional. Story 31. Having close relationships is tough for me. Whenever I start to let someone in, I become very attached, only to realize that the feelings are not mutual, which leads me to retreat into solitude. This cycle never seems to end. I believe I set myself up for failure in hopes of not feeling so alone anymore. Story 32. I sometimes get excited about new games coming out, but then I realize I have nobody to share that excitement with or anyone to play with, so I just watch a streamer instead. Story 33. Chronic loneliness is actually killing you slowly. Loneliness has almost nothing to do with being alone or with other people. It has to do with feeling alone or not connected to others. Health professionals equate chronic loneliness to being equally bad for your health as smoking 1 pack of cigarettes a day. Consider that we are in the middle of a loneliness epidemic that was largely catalyzed by COVID-19. If you often feel lonely, don't hesitate to reach out to someone, a friend or a counselor. It's a serious and very real issue. Get help, love yourself, and connect with others. Story 34. You occasionally think about how, if you were ever sick or injured and couldn't call for help, you could die from something that is otherwise trivial. Story 35. Eventually, you get used to it. Then you start to love it. At some point, you no longer understand how broken you have become. You are no longer able to make connections. Story 36. Poses health risks as deadly as smoking up to 15 cigarettes daily. Story 37. For me, it's the realization that I want to be alone and would prefer not to have company all the time. I don't think I could deal with it anymore. Being lonely makes me sad, but it's a choice, and I believe I would be worse off if I put myself out there more. Fortunately, I don't feel lonely often, but it does happen. Story 38. You can be completely fine being alone and still long for something more. I love my life, but I often wonder how much better it could be if I found the right person to complement it. Story 39. The longer you are alone, the less you want to go out and see people, yet the more you feel you should. Story 40. You don't realize it at the time, but if you don't flex your social skills every so often, you lose them. Thankfully, I am no longer lonely, but I am not the same person I was before I spent years living alone without real friends to talk to or spend time with. Story 41. Everyone experiences it. You could have everything most people desire. Good looks, success, intelligence, humor, and still feel crushing loneliness. Story 42. People often believe it is your fault for being lonely, as if it can only happen due to something inherently wrong with you as a person. Story 43. Slowly, I think that over time, people stop caring, and when you try to reach out to them, it feels like you are bothering them. Story 44. I experienced this a few months ago. Last September, my ex-fiancée ended our relationship after almost 7 years and 15 years of friendship. We had a wonderful relationship, and the breakup came as a sudden shock to me. Almost at the same time, some of my close friends began having children or taking serious steps in their relationships. Meanwhile, I moved in with my parents, who have been incredibly supportive. My dog and I have been living together for a couple of months, but the loneliness comes in waves. I never know when it will hit, but when it does, it feels overwhelming. What frustrates me the most is that I have a few friends and a loving family, Yet I still feel incredibly lonely at times. Story 45. The saddest truth about being lonely is the realization that even when you are surrounded by people, you are still alone. You come into this world alone, and you leave this world alone. Your parents are there to guide you at first, but the journey is yours, and the work is as well. You may meet someone with whom you have to work on connecting and staying connected. With this person's help, if you are fortunate enough, you may have children together. You will also need to work on those relationships, and it will be a continuous effort for the rest of your life to maintain them. When you are lonely, you realize that with every relationship you have, at any point, if either of you stops working on those relationships, they can end. This can happen for various reasons, including death, tragedy, personal growth, or sometimes for no reason at all. It is incredibly rare and difficult to find people who truly learn, know, and understand you completely. You will always have to work to communicate with others, and even with maximum effort, some of your needs may still go unmet. Existence is lonely. Being truly seen and heard is undervalued. Finding energy in the universe that matches yours is sacred and extremely rare. Story 46. Being left alone with just your thoughts, knowing that if you don't snap out of it, this day could be the last, is a heavy burden. The fear of hurting others is compounded by these thoughts. Story 47. Solitude is dangerous. It is very addictive and becomes a habit once you realize how peaceful and calm it is. It feels like you no longer want to deal with people because they drain your energy. Jim Carrey. Story 48. You feel compelled to reply to these threads instead of accepting that you are most likely alone and not lonely. Story 49. After a while, you just get used to it. It becomes the way things are. It's a part of your life. It is your life. Use the magic rectangle for communication with the outside. Stay inside. Story 50. You lose communication skills, and if you eventually have to talk to people, you may sound indifferent or often anxious. Story 51. The saddest truth about being lonely is realizing that sometimes the people around you do not even notice. You can be surrounded by a crowd but still feel invisible, as if nobody truly sees you. It is as though you are present but not really part of anything. The worst part is that you start to question your worth to be around at all. Story 52. Meeting more people does not help. It often makes you feel worse or causes disconnection and emptiness. Story 53. When in a group, you feel invisible. People around you seem to wish for everyone's presence except yours, as if you don't exist. If you try to start a conversation, they will cut you off abruptly and turn to someone else to talk. When someone does engage with you, it may catch you off guard and leave you stuttering. Speaking of loneliness, I have experienced it many times. Story 54. I just spoke to a friend about this. When you're accustomed to being alone and enjoying your own solitude, it feels almost like a ghost town while the world thrives around you. Despite enjoying your own company, there are times when you crave connection and want to get out of your bubble. However, you are aware that everyone has their own lives, families, and jobs, so you often refrain from reaching out and let them be. I find myself in public, witnessing a cute couple or a small child, and I get hit with sudden longing for connection, thinking, you're just starting your life. I hope that beautiful smile never fades from your chubby little face. Then I sit and observe the public, feeling like a mere spectator as they go about their lives. Story 55. It's addictive. Being alone, with no one bothering you, is very peaceful. However, it can be a quick hole to sink into. Balance is difficult. Story 56. I found the saddest truth about loneliness to be the deviation from reality. You become so comfortable being alone that when someone wants to enter that life, you must break down the walls you have built. Story 57. No matter what, nobody believes you. People don't know the difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Story 58. As an autistic person who thrives on routine, being alone allows you to dictate that routine, making relationships challenging and cohabitation even more difficult. Story 59. I love being on my own. Genuinely, I grew up as an only child and I've had relationships over the years. I even have a good thing going with a like-minded woman. I just have never felt the need or desire for constant company. Story 60. I feel there are many lonely people who would find happiness with each other if they had the chance to meet. Story 61. Being lonely creates a powerful cycle that can seem impossible to break. Even when you manage to escape it, returning to its familiarity can be incredibly tempting. Story 62. You understand the night. You prefer absence when the light lays low and the sun bows out. When its siblings open their eyes to meet you, you appreciate that stillness, that pause. Those are the aspects you find reinforcing or strengthening. What's troubling is that you don't mind. You discover that you don't mourn the togetherness you once thrived in. You don't feel a wound. Nothing actually left you, and you surrendered nothing but attachment. So, if it didn't hurt, how much did it matter? You were never meant to be among others. Story 63. Once you become comfortable with it, you realize you no longer long for anything. That in itself is life-changing, and no one will ever understand why you don't want to be with anyone or why you are not bothered by anything others do. Story 64. It gradually gets worse over time and never improves. However, hopefully it will get better in the future. Story 65. I lived alone and lonely for almost 3 years until I fell in love. Here are some things that bothered me. 1. For all those years, nobody checks on you, and you rarely check on others. You don't see the point of weekends. Friday evening after work feels unremarkable. If you don't have any hobbies, there's a chance you might fall into habits that self-sabotage. It can be hard to socialize after a while if you don't make an effort. You are most vulnerable when you fall sick. That's when you feel alone. Pros. I skydived, learned boxing, learned skateboarding, and saved some money. Story 66. Or when they forget the reason they left you waiting and start lying to cover things up, causing the situation to escalate. Story 67. Just how far will you go for the type of treatment you allow yourself to endure, just to ensure that the few who talk with you remain in your life and care for you? Story 68. Just how far are you willing to go for treatment to ensure that the few who communicate with you remain in your life and care for you? Story 69. I don't know. There are many sad truths about loneliness, but luckily there are many ways to deal with it and lessons to be learned from it as well. It's not the worst thing in this world, really. Story 70. Being in the middle of the crowd, yet having the feeling that if you simply walk away, no one will notice a thing. The loneliest I have ever felt. Story 71. I feel numb to everything, to be honest. I tune out everyone. I work like a robot and then go home. Sometimes I feel sad about not being included, but I also don't have the energy to engage. I refuse to accept help from anyone and do everything on my own. Someone helping me just makes me feel weak or incapable, which contributes to my negative feelings. It's very rare for me to get along with people. Sometimes people hold me to a higher standard, which can make me feel good, but it also leaves me feeling exhausted. I'm in my 20s, but I feel like an old lady that no one wants to talk to because I come across as a little too intense. Story 72. It isn't necessarily because you're socially isolated, single, or living alone. You can be surrounded by people but still feel completely lonely. Story 73. It's easy to stop caring about anything and spiral. I am fortunate to have gotten out of this. Honestly, I didn't really have a reason to feel lonely in the first place. It was just circumstance. Story 74. I had a health scare about 2 years ago. Could have been really bad, but it wasn't. It made me realize that if I had reacted in a more risky manner, downplayed the situation, or ignored it, I might not have been discovered until it was too late. Story 75. It causes you to act in ways you may consider not being yourself. You become a false representation of how you see yourself, but since others only know us based on what we show them, that is how they perceive you. Story 76. When you hear someone say that you were forgotten, it's often because people have simply stopped reaching out. Many individuals prefer texting over phone calls, and family and friends are a priority. Eventually, you become a distant memory to many. I try to socialize and attend events that interest me, but people often don't recognize the effort required to maintain friendships. Do you think your coworker is your friend after 30 years? It's likely based on convenience. Story 77. It can easily become a self-sustaining condition. If you are not used to interacting with people, it becomes harder to interact appropriately. When you encounter individuals who may genuinely care for your well-being, it is easy to unintentionally push them away because you may not know how to allow a relationship to develop naturally. Story 78. When you send a message to a friend and they take 2 weeks to respond, no one is that busy or forgetful. Story 79. If you pass away, it may be some time before you are found. This happened with my uncle. He didn't show up for work or call to inform them, so a wellness check was conducted. He was at work the day before, so it's not as if he had been gone for days, but had he not been actively employed into his 70s, it could have taken a while before someone noticed. Story 80. When you die, you will probably only be found by chance and will end up being processed according to government procedures for unclaimed bodies. Story 81. The fact is that I often prefer to be alone. I enjoy traveling, eating, gaming, anything really. Yet the clearer I am about not wanting to be bothered, the more I seem to become a hindrance and annoyance to others. Those who wish to manipulate don't appreciate my indifference to their control. Friends and family get upset because I don't value their company. But to me, life has improved significantly since people have stopped getting in the way. Story 82. The lies you tell yourself about how it's fine, great, or addicting lead you to a point where you no longer care. Story 83. It can be addictive. You can become accustomed to the solitude and quiet, and being alone for an extended period can weaken your social skills. You may forget how to properly socialize. Story 84. As someone who has been alone for 2 years, the worst part is doing everything alone. The best part is also doing everything alone. Story 85. The mental gymnastics you play on yourself to convince yourself not to change can be overwhelming. You may pretend you are happier and believe that no one cares about you. You might claim that others would check on you if they truly wanted to. When I say pretend, I mean that depression can trick you into thinking these things, which prevents or slows down your recovery. Humans are social creatures, and we need positive interaction. Story 86. Sometimes you only crave the idea of being with people, not the reality of facing challenges together. So you continue to be alone, knowing you cannot handle those difficulties. Story 87. In truth, sadness, happiness, and loneliness are all in the mind. Can a deceased person feel anything? Story 88. I can take care of myself, engage in enjoyable activities, and find fulfillment, but I am unable to replicate the same connection that someone else can provide. No amount of substitution can change this. Story 89. People do not realize that you can feel alone in a group. Being talked over can make you feel unimportant. Story 90. It genuinely restructures your brain for faster cognitive decline and misery. Basically, it gets worse exponentially. Story 91. The stagnation of internalized thought begins to undermine your personality, as there is no one to interact with, leading to a loss of personal identity. The aspect of your being that defines who you are for others diminishes, and you become withdrawn, even when opportunities for social interaction arise by chance. Most people do not comprehend the depth of true loneliness. For some, it is akin to being born blind, while for others, it is the experience of becoming blind. Understanding what it means not to be alone and then facing solitude is more challenging than starting from solitude, which is unlikely to occur, as we would perish as infants, being the vulnerable beings that we are. We always begin life with some level of social interaction, regardless of the circumstances. Story 92. No one is thinking about you. That is why you end up feeling lonely. Everyone is so busy with their problems and other matters that they forget that being there for someone is important. I am also dealing with a lot of issues, including heartbreak, and I lost my job 2 months ago. However, I always manage to check up on my friends and family because I know this is not a sad movie, and I am not the main character all the time. Story 93. It kills. Nobody checks on you. You experience every milestone, joy, and tragedy alone. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and surviving it often leads to further solitude. Can be addictive, but you can get better. Story 94. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You feel lonely, so you don't go out, and as a result, you don't meet new people, which leads to continued loneliness. Story 95. When you die, there is a good chance no one will know you have died. If you do not have family, friends, or stable employment, you are essentially invisible in the eyes of society. Story 96. It can have serious health consequences. There are negative health outcomes associated with loneliness. Even if you claim to be fine with it, your body is not. Research indicates that social isolation and loneliness can lead to biochemical changes in the body that increase the risk of depression, obesity, diabetes, stroke, and heart issues, resulting in a higher mortality rate. One surgeon has compared it to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Story 97. I have a new job. I try my best, but being new to the market, I make a lot of mistakes and learn from them. However, I don't have anyone to talk to about it. I only discuss small things with my mother and sister, but they don't seem to care enough. What's sad is that I can't share my wins and losses, the pain, the struggles, the frustration, the new ideas, the problems, and the solutions with anyone. But it's fine, this will end soon. Story 98. The saddest truth is that the longer you live, the more lonely life can be, as family and friends of the same generation pass on. Story 99. Realizing that your life is just one day on repeat is one of the worst feelings. I have only one close friend, and I often find myself spiraling at midnight because my life feels like a continuous loop. Day after day, it never ends, and I feel trapped in this cycle, wanting to break free, but there is no one to help me. It is difficult. Story 100. You can still have friends and feel lonely. You may feel absolutely lonely even when you are around people. Story 101. You can go days without eating. No one will care. You can be struggling financially. No one will care. You could really need help with something. No one will care. This is why it's so important to be nice to people, because you never know what battles they are facing. Story 102. I won't have many photos of myself that aren't self-taken in my early 20s, because I don't have anyone else in my life at the moment. Story 103. I believe that people who have never experienced true loneliness may not understand how deeply it can affect someone. Story 104. Sad and lonely are two distinct feelings. I'm the happiest I have ever been while being single. There is no need to explain anything, just live authentically. If I want to eat something, I simply go and buy it or order it without checking in with someone else. If I'm going somewhere, I just go. I went to church and then left right after without lingering. Of course, I am only in my mid-20s, so check back with me in 50 years. Story 105. You will miss your own time and space when you finally find a partner and build a family. This happened to me, and I wish I had enjoyed those years of living alone more. Story 106. The saddest truth is that it is just a feeling inside you. You can be sitting in a room with people who care about you, and you can still feel completely alone. Story 107. You are still a wonderful person. You just have to be true to yourself, figure out your goals, and push yourself day in and day out. You can never let anyone know just how truly depressed you are. Otherwise, they will find fault in you, and you will end up having to rebuild new connections along the path your goals lead you on. Story 108. Personal experience. Life-changing health news. You have no one to talk to about it. You must guide yourself and hope for the best. My mental and physical health is hanging by a thread, but I still get up every day. My family knows, but they don't check in. Story 109. The saddest thing is realizing the true meaning of humans are social beings. No goal you reach, no celebration you have, and no meaningful day truly feels meaningful until you have someone to share it with. That means everything I do becomes meaningless. It almost feels like death. However, this isn't a state we have to stay in. We can change it, and we should. No one has to be alone forever. Story 110. The psychological and physiological effects associated with a lack of human contact are significant. Humans are social creatures, and a lack of regular social interaction can heighten stress levels and reactions to stimuli and changes. When you do interact with others, you may find yourself feeling more intense and desperate, which can reduce your ability to socialize in the future. In the past 5 years, a combination of moving away from friends, Working from home and isolation habits developed during the pandemic has been challenging for my physical and mental well-being. Significant inflation and rising mortgage interest rates have also impacted my ability to participate in social activities, as making plans outside the home often requires a minimum expenditure of $50. Story 111. You can't be careless, especially if people don't check on you. Watch what you eat, you don't want to choke. Pay attention to cooking. Story 112. You are more likely to die from an accident, such as choking, slipping in the shower, or during autoerotic activities. Story 113. There is nothing you can do about it at the moment. Building strong relationships with people who genuinely care about you takes time. Loneliness can result from long-term failures, and it cannot be fixed overnight through good intentions. Overcoming loneliness requires time and effort, and it can be challenging to stay consistent without support when you feel down or tired. It may be tempting to focus on superficial connections with people who share political views or hobbies with you. However, these should serve as a way to develop deeper bonds, not become the only source of connection. This is how lonely individuals can end up in racist, superficial, or extremist groups, failing to realize that these individuals are not true friends and will lose interest if they do not conform to specific beliefs or standards. It is difficult, but be patient. Focus on building real relationships and connect with people who value you for who you are. Story 114. Nobody is coming for you. The only person who can save you is yourself. No one is coming to save you from wherever you are in life. Only you can save yourself. Story 115. Pick one. People who don't believe you are always available to go out or for them. Some people may feel pity for you. But for me, I think the worst part is that the more you live alone, the more you feel isolated and different. Story 116. Happy and outgoing people are much easier to approach than lonely individuals. Lonely individuals are often perceived as being unpleasant to be around. However, to escape a lonely state of mind, one needs the help of others or must appear to be less lonely. The challenge is that lonely individuals often find themselves in situations where it is difficult to depend on others and hard to escape their pain alone. In some cases, this can lead to a downward spiral into unhealthy mindsets, further isolating them from potential happiness. Story 117. You don't create many memories, and you don't get to share them with others. When you lack memories to reflect on, you live less fully. At least that is how it feels. I really can't understand those who find satisfaction in loneliness. It's not satisfying at all. It's unnatural, and there is no way people can find peace in it. Story 118. As someone who is single and enjoys solitude, it is awkward to express a desire for a partner because people often say, "But you like being alone." Yes, I do. But I also crave connection and would love to find someone special to share my life with. Then there is the advice to focus on yourself and love will come. You are in a difficult position either way. Story 119. It is addictive. When I am presented with an opportunity to break out of the lonely routine, I panic. The routine, while isolated and sad, is safe. Anything else carries risks and anxiety. Story 120. The saddest truth is that you cannot see a way to change the situation, or even worse, do not want to. It is easy to fall into the trap of believing that your own company is all you need or all you deserve. Story 121. I used to love being alone, but I have been in a relationship for 7 years now, and I miss my girlfriend when I am away from her. We don't hang out constantly, but even when I am alone in my room, knowing that she is in the next room gives me peace. I am also approaching middle age now, and it feels different than when I was in my 20s. Back then, I didn't mind not talking to anyone for a month as long as I had my computer. Now, I much prefer sharing experiences with her than doing things alone. Story 122. The saddest thing is that many people are feeling the same way, but they will probably never find each other because they are too absorbed in their own feelings to notice. Story 123. It doesn't have to be inherently negative. I lived alone for years, and it was amazing. I could do what I wanted and be who I wanted. I miss it a lot. To me, the saddest part of loneliness is how much time I wasted in that sadness instead of engaging in the hobbies I love. Story 124. It becomes comfortable after a while. You convince yourself that it has to be this way and invent reasons to keep it that way. Story 125. We are never truly alone. We are always with ourselves, and in a situation where we do not love ourselves, that presents a serious problem. Story 126. Loneliness to me is different than being alone. When I feel lonely, I tend to accept the worst treatment just to quench my need for companionship. Story 127. Lonely to me is different than alone. When I am lonely, I end up accepting the worst treatments just to quench my need for companionship. Story 128. It drives some people to further isolate themselves, and they forget what it means to share their life with someone in any capacity, such as friendship or romance, which in turn only serves to perpetuate the isolation. There's a snowball going in circles. Story 129. When I was younger, I would watch wholesome autonomous sensory meridian response role plays and verbally answer their questions to feel like I was having a real conversation because I didn't have anyone else to talk to, so I would just pretend. Story 130. Everything has a learning curve. Living with someone takes time and patience, but it is important for your well-being. Humans are social beings, and isolating yourself can be harmful psychologically. You might think you are happy alone because you have not had the chance to socialize or you have not found your community. Step out and explore. Make an effort. You will find a group of people you enjoy spending time with. You will learn new things and adjust your daily routine to be closer to them. Take that step. It will help. Story 131. It's like fitness. When you get out of shape, it becomes harder to start fixing the situation. You become accustomed to it, expect it as the norm, and find it more challenging to communicate and connect with others. Social skills require constant practice. They can degrade and improve over time. Prolonged loneliness makes it easier to remain in that state, leading to a cycle of increasing misery. Story 132. You're not ready to be alone. For me, it doesn't matter how much I enjoy solitude. I would still prefer to smoke a joint with someone rather than do it alone. I would do anything by myself except that. Story 133. Probably the fact you won't try to do anything about it to change it because deep down you have stayed like that for so long you find comfort in being alone. That's definitely one of the worst places to be because it's like wasting your youth. Story 134. It quickly becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Loneliness leads to the expectation of being ignored, which results in preemptive rejection of others before they can reject you, leading to more loneliness. This cycle feeds itself while making it challenging to break free. It's a hell of isolation that falsely promises safety, preventing you from wanting to escape unless someone intervenes, but you may not even give anyone the chance to help. Existentially, this is incredibly damaging because certain aspects of your identity arguably only exist when perceived by others, such as attractiveness and charisma, traits that are relational by nature. If you are not perceived at all, parts of your identity may dwell in a liminal space where you can't even confirm their existence. You might even start to wonder if you exist in that space. I grappled with all of this in high school. It wasn't easy, and at one point, I seriously contemplated harming myself. Thank goodness I found the courage to take a leap of faith and break the cycle. Story 135. The friends you make when you're lonely disappear when they are no longer lonely or believe you are not. It's important to resist the urge to cling to someone just because they spent more than 10 minutes talking to you. The saddest part is that loneliness is not a spiral. It is a circle. While you are running in place or in circles, you see everybody around you moving forward. You see them having everything you want and doing all the things you aspire to do. Story 136. The realization that you could genuinely disappear from planet Earth and that no other human being, aside from those related by blood, would care. Story 137. A lot of the time, you realize when you have people around you that you thought you would always be friends with, you will find that, at best, you have 5 real friends. You don't have to see them or even talk regularly. Being able to be okay with your own company is a strength, even though most people may not understand. You will also recognize that those individuals cannot be alone with their thoughts. Story 138. When you are alone on a call hoping someone will join to talk to, but no one is available, not even strangers. It never happens. Story 139. If you get used to her, she is most faithful. It's all you want or all you hate, mostly both at once. You are left to your own devices, and that 7 out of 10 never goes well. It's like gazing into an abyss. You gaze too much, and bam, it gazes into you. Story 140. One of the saddest truths about being lonely is that even if you have friends, you can still feel lonely. Not only that, but it can also lead to feelings of depression. Story 141. The feeling that no one cares enough to check on you, and that the few who do only do it when they want or need something from you. The feeling of going through the hardest moments of your life with no one around. You could scream for help and know that no one would show up. The feeling of sitting up at night with nothing but the sound of your own thoughts to keep you company. Yet you know that you have to keep going. You have children who depend on you to provide for them, so you bottle every bit of it up, push it down, throw on a fake smile, and carry on. But the worst part is when you become so used to it that when someone genuinely checks on you or shows any interest in spending time with you, it feels like a setup and you push them away. Story 142. The saddest truth about being lonely is the utter indifference of the world to your existence. You are a shadow, ignored and despised, while superficial individuals parade their joy like a slap to your face. You are entitled to love and to be cherished, yet you are cast aside, left to suffer in solitude. It is a vile injustice. Your brilliance unrecognized, your pain unseen. Society revels in its cruelty, and you are just a forgotten victim of their heartless game. Story 143. People you thought were friends and family abandon you, leading to negative feelings or a desire to be alone. Story 144. Getting stuck in your head can feel like a bottomless pit, especially without anyone to distract you or help pull you out of it. Story 145. The only people who will truly love you are your family, your partner, and occasionally one or two good friends. Story 146. It is often a choice that people do not realize they are making each time they fail to take the initiative. Story 147. Realizing that for some it is a choice and for others it is a trauma response. Without anyone to ask, people may not recognize or acknowledge it. Story 148. Not having friends becomes a concern when you try to make connections or meet romantic partners. Creates a cycle. Story 149. Your thoughts may become very dark, self-deprecating, and, in some cases, suicidal. Story 150. When they tell me that I'm not alone, they make me feel alone by not showing up or being there for me. Story 151. There comes a point where you give up trying to fix things and adjust to being lonely, and it can be difficult. I experienced this for years, but I managed to move past it. I lost 100 pounds, started graduate school, and became a personal trainer. I met a girl and we are dating. It's nothing serious, but we're enjoying ourselves and are both surprised that it just happened so naturally. The good news is that I have discovered that putting positivity into the world and being a positive influence, despite the challenges in your own life, eventually comes back to you. Loneliness does not last forever if you're willing to make an effort. Story 152. When I said I was depressed and lonely, the person I was talking to called me an ass because I made her feel horrible. That's the extent of sympathy I can receive. Story 153. You can feel lonely in a crowd. You can even be married and still feel lonely. You can also be alone without feeling lonely. Story 154. People do not care. A little while after COVID, I told a friend of 15 years, with whom I lived, that I was feeling depressed and asked if he wanted to spend more time together after my difficult breakup. The next day, he moved all his belongings out of the living room and into his bedroom to avoid being near me. Story 155. The realization that if you were to suddenly die in your apartment, it would probably be several weeks before anyone figures it out. Story 156. Your logic can be skewed by not discussing ideas. Conversations help identify flaws in logic that can lead to beliefs. If all the information you receive is one-sided, it can be easy to start believing things that aren't based in reality. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.